Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Hump. And I got my friend George. George, what day is today?
Do I have to say
Come
it?
on, say it. Yeah, come on, say it.
It's hump
It's
day,
Hump
baby. It's hump day.
Day.
I don't want to be a bummer, but it's actually Thursday
No.
here. It's Thursday here,
Oh, that's
Mark.
true. That's true. Isn't that awesome? This is my third Aussie on the show. I love it. I had Adam on the show. I had who else did I have? I forgot for a second. Holy crap. But a couple of recommendations by Adam. I had CT Falk on the other last week, but he's in Canada.
Nice.
He's not in
Yeah,
Australia.
yeah.
But yeah, I think I thought I had, or maybe I have another one coming up. I forget. But anyways, love having you guys on, and because it's 16 or some odd hours ahead, so you can tell me what the future's like. I love it. But welcome everybody to the Hump, another episode, number 11, my lucky number 11, with George Coudounaris from the B2B Playbook and the B2B Playbook podcast. So I'm honored because I'm like a amateur podcaster at this point, and I think you've got hundreds of episodes. So I'm hoping to get some advice out of you tonight. But definitely want to hear your story. We always give my guests here a couple of minutes just to introduce themselves. Tell us where you're calling in from, a little bit about your family, or whatever else you want to tell us about you personally, and maybe some of the things that you got going on in your business life and world. And before we get into some of the interesting topics we have set up for tonight. But George, thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Mark. And look, with those compliments, happy to talk about whatever you want. That sounds great. Personal life, probably biggest update for me, and I think why we had to push things to this year, Mark. I think we were going to catch up late last year. Was I just had my first child, little girl, Lily. She's 6 weeks old. She's going for a 6-week checkup today. So nice. She's been putting on weight, turning into a little chubber, which we're very excited about.
Well, they do. They always do. You know, every baby's a little got that. You hope.
Yeah. That's right. It's fun to see, and surviving with the on a lot less sleep, but something's kicked in and doing okay, which is awesome. Greek background, if you couldn't tell from all the vowels in my last name. So while I might be a family of 3, that means all my cousins and everything are basically like my siblings, and so everyone is very much in my life all the time. Everyone's got a key to our door, so there's no privacy. Everyone has full access to the fridge without asking for permission, but it's a nice way to live.
You just rolled off all the literal stereotypes that people think about when a Greek wedding, you know.
Instead of everyone being called Nick in my family, everyone's called Stephen. There's so many Stevens, it's absurd and very confusing. And now everyone's older, and in the professional world, it gets some people in a bit of hot water because there's 5 people with Stephen Coudounaris running around on LinkedIn. Half of them are lawyers, and they're all changing jobs and stuff. And so their boss is like, "Hey, I saw you updated your LinkedIn profile and you're now working here. What's going on?"
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So gets you in a bit of hot water.
Well, if it's any consolation, one of my best friends, or used to be a very good friend, I don't talk to him too much anymore because we're kind of live away. And I actually used to practically crash at his house a lot. I was his best man at his wedding. His name is Spiros Zorbas.
Oh my goodness!
And I will tell you that he definitely had a lot of family, because I went to his wedding, and I met 100,000 people there. I think it was 300 people. I don't know. It was just crazy. And after a while, we just started drinking. Nobody even cared whose name was who Anthony was or this one was. It was just
the Spiros are crazy. I've got an uncle Spiro, and he is wild, absolutely wild.
Yeah. Is there a were you born and raised in Australia?
Yeah, born and raised in Australia. It was my grandparents who emigrated way back when. So we've definitely kept, I would say, the culture and tradition alive as much as possible. Don't speak the language as well as I'd like. But yeah, maybe that's something. Now I've got a daughter. I feel like that's something I really want to do to try and give her. So maybe we can learn together.
So your parents obviously speak it, and then
Yeah.
so she grows up and she could speak it. They would love that. Then they could talk about you, and you.
I know, right? That's
my
dangerous.
grandmother used to speak Yiddish. You know, I think my father and my mother would understand, but they would never like talk back. Like they didn't have to talk back. So like if my mother, so that's when we knew that my grandmother was talking about us, because
Right.
oh
Yeah.
yes, you're right. You know, that's what my mother would say, but my grandmother would be like "Schlupkopf in the Wand," you know, like say all kinds of different things, and I don't know what she's talking about. But I got in trouble. I have a little bit of Spanish. I can speak a little bit of Spanish, but I don't really understand as much as I can speak it, or I should say, I understand a lot more than what I can speak actually. And so, like, if somebody speaks Spanish to me, I could probably potentially gather what they're saying, but it's like any language, though, really. Body language has a lot to do with it. So you could always sort of maybe get an idea what somebody's talking about.
That's true. It sounds
I
like you
gotta
can speak enough to get yourself into trouble.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe not, and maybe not enough to get yourself out.
Yeah, I did. I absolutely did. I was on a trip to Mexico, and it was the Giants. The Giants happened to be at the time. It happened to be in like the playoffs or the Super Bowl, maybe the championships game, right? And they actually were showing the championship game on one of those big TVs in the lobby, and I mean like big TV. I mean not flat screen big. I mean like big. The back of the TV was big. So this is obviously going back some odd years, and so I get on this bus to go on this like boat trip, like excursion. And I got on the bus. The bus driver happened to also be the guy who was driving the boat, which I couldn't figure that one out. But when I got on the bus, I was like, "Hola, ¿cómo está?" And he was like, "Bien, y tú?" I'm like, "Oh, sí, sí." You know, I sat down. And then later on the boat, I happened to be like one of the last ones on the boat, so I had to sit in this like front seat. And everybody else was behind me on the bench, and then the captain was like behind me, so I had this like nice seat in the front, and I wasn't facing him, but I heard him say something like twice or three times in my direction, and I was like, "Oh, you talking to me?" And the only thing I picked up on was him saying "Gigantes, Nueva York Gigantes." And he was like, "Oro, did you watch the New York Giants on TV, on television?" "Oh, oh, you're talking about the Giants. Oh, yeah." I didn't know he was talking to me because he thought I could speak Spanish. He thought I knew exactly what I would have understood what he's saying, you know, and I didn't. But I picked up on it after a couple of minutes. So that's my story about trying to speak Spanish and getting into trouble. So.
That's awesome.
I really thank you for coming on the show. You know, I tend to have a lot of sales side of the business, owners, founders, salespeople, and as I look at your background, and I see a lot of the stuff that you've been focusing on recently and throughout your career is more marketing focused. I mean, obviously, we always can talk about how it's really the same thing. I mean, marketers just use maybe platforms and content and stuff like that traditionally than maybe what people consider salespeople to just really use the phone, let's say, for example. And the problem is ultimately is that there really is no difference, and they need to be working together, and each one feeds the other. Maybe there's problems with compensation and just process and attributions and things like that, and we can get a lot into that. But I think it's at the end of the day, we're all just trying to create revenue. That's what you're supposed to do for the business. There's no other thing except for HR, right? I mean, which is a cost center. It could be a profit center too, but like everything else is a profit center. Marketing is supposed to produce revenue. Sales produces revenue. So why are they always considered to be separate? Which blows my mind. And so, but I think when it comes down to sales, right? When you look at sales and you say, well, you have inbound and you have outbound, right? And the inbound obviously is you're doing some kind of marketing or emailing or putting out an offer or something, or you're going to a show and stuff's coming in. And then the outbound is that stuff that needs to be worked that's coming in, as well as what you might do cold. And but even cold, it's like, okay, we're still trying to get out there and a lot of times search for the hands that are raising, right? Or hands that might be raised or might want to be raised, right? And that's still demand, to me, is demand capture. Like, oh, you got it, you're capturing it. Okay. So there is a little bit of that on the sales side as well as the marketing side is coming inbound demand capture. But demand gen, like how do you create the demand? How do you influence the market? How do you, like, there was a post today about really good sales, but I forget who, but maybe Anthony Natalie wrote this. I think it was, he said, how do you, a good salesperson, oh no, I'm sorry. Let me back up. It was Jason Bay. He said a good salesperson creates the demand, finds the problem and illuminates it for the customer. It makes it brighter for him, helps them understand that this is actually a problem they should address, and that could even be a little bit of that, to me, is a little bit of that demand generation in terms of how do we create that content around that concept or that problem illumination and then serve it up so that you can warm those guys into a conversation. And I think, to me, that's a bit of demand generation. And we do, as a company, a little bit of that, like programmatic campaign displays and other things that drive people to eventually say, hey, you know what, I want to learn a little bit more about that. That is a problem, but I just haven't addressed it, And so in theory, I think in that case, you're creating demand, but love to really have you dig in on that, because that's your thing, demand gen. What's the difference? Do you need both? Fire away.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely, you need both. Typically, you talk about demand generation, demand capture. Some people break down demand gen into like shaping future demand, and others break it down into like, shaping future demand versus capturing demand that's in market right now. It's all about, of the 100% of the market that could be your ideal customers, the research shows that only 5% are in a buying cycle, actively looking to buy from you right now. The other 95%, they're not buying yet. They don't need you yet. Of course, it varies, like depending on your product and industry, but that's basically what we know. You layer on some additional research from Bain & Company that says that when people go and make a short list and they enter a buying cycle, 8 out of 10 will only buy from you if they've heard about your brand before making that day one list. So all of a sudden that means, well, if 8 out of 10 are only going to buy from you if they've heard about you from before, that means that there's only 20% who will. So let's say that you're not doing any type of
20% of 5%.
Well, so that's right, which is effectively like 1%, right? So let's just say, let's say you have a total addressable market of 1,000 companies. What does that take us down to? It takes us down to 10 who would even put you on their short list, which is why it feels like trying to find a needle in a haystack, right? Sometimes, because especially if no one's heard about you before, because it is like, and that's what the research shows us. And if someone stops to think and to ask their buyers and try and track like what their buying journey looked like, they would realize that it happens well before like someone appears as a prospect in your CRM. But for some reason, we've lost our minds, and like we're pretending that all of a sudden, like we can just go after this 1% that would only buy from us right now, and we're wondering why we can't scale there. Because like, guess what? There's a whole lot of other companies that are also competing for that 1% or that 5%, and barrier to entry for companies to create a company has never been lower. And so every year, like it's just like more and more sharks jumping into the same size swimming pool, competing for the same number of fish, unless your industry is rapidly growing. And that's why it just gets harder and harder if you're only capturing demand. And the method to sustainable growth is acknowledging, hey, okay, there's a great portion of the market that aren't ready to buy right now. And we need to, as a sales and marketing team, acknowledge that we're going to have to be doing some building of relationships. And that is going to take some time until those people come into market. But if we do it right, when they come into market, they're going to see us as their number one solution.
Yeah.
And that's why, Mark, I love what you said, from the beginning. And I think like a lot of the best salespeople and most holistic salespeople I've spoken to have said the same thing. Marketing and sales, we should be saying the same thing. And I think as marketers, we're really good at communicating on a one-to-many and a one-to-few basis, like to lots of people with like ads and content and all that kind of stuff. And then on one to few basis, like webinars and customer advisory boards, events, that kind of thing. And then sales happens to be really good at one-to-one because they're like better people. They're better with people generally, and they're more confident. They're better taking those interactions. But the things we're saying should be the same, basically.
Absolutely. In fact, I've said this a few times, maybe even on this show, where, let's talk email for a second, right? So I use email and LinkedIn and phone in conjunction with each other. And so for all intents and purposes, I don't get a whole lot of replies. And I don't think it's because my content in the email sucks, or, that I'm not getting, I'm getting opens for those that may actually be opens, second, third opens are usually something legit. But what I do know, I don't get as many positive replies as I would like. I've gotten several here and there, but mostly no's, if anything, or unsubscribes, which I'm sure is mostly what everybody does. But I know that it's working, and I'll tell you why I know it's working. I know that it works in conjunction with each other because, I've had conversations with people, and I'm using the same words, the same verbiage, the same phrases as I am using on the phone. I'm using in the email. I'm using in maybe a LinkedIn DM, or my marketing guy is actually using in the banner display ads or the Google ads, right? And as you use the same words and the same phrases, what I have seen happen, or have heard or listened to my own calls, right, is I'll be in the middle of a conversation that has gone past the opener, which it usually does. And I'll be talking, and then all of a sudden they'll go, "Wait, did you send me an email on this stuff?" Or I just got I think I saw something on this the other day. I don't know. Somebody was talking about it or whatever. You don't realize, oh, I was at an event. Maybe I seen you at an event. The verbiage that's on the banners at the event or whatever it is. If everybody's in alignment there, right, and those words are in alignment, so to speak, I know that I got more time on that call because something in that person's mind resonated. Whatever I was saying resonated with him because he's heard it before. Where did he hear it? He heard it in an email I wrote to him, or he saw it on a campaign display. Display campaign, programmatic, whatever. And so it's just, it just makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why those feedback loops between sales and marketing are so important too, because it's often sales are the ones who are at the coalface having those live conversations and can feedback hey, this phrasing really resonated, or hey, the customer actually framed the problem this way. We've been saying it this way. It's literally just taking the customer's words and feeding them back to marketing, because we can do that and push it out there and communicate in a more effective way. And then sales can use those words too. And there's no point in us trying to give the customer new phrases, new words, because education is exhausting and expensive and takes a long time to do. Understand how they view the problem, understand the words that they use to describe it, and just feed that back between the two teams.
Yeah, and it's are they afraid to meet? Do they feel like they're up against each other? Is it a culture thing?
Yeah, 100%. I think, and it's funny because as you know, I've been working closely with Adam Mandarovich, and almost every day there's stuff that I will do that will annoy him as a salesperson. And I'm a marketer who is pretty well aware of how to try and break down silos. And he's like, you marketers just need to understand how we salespeople operate. I sent Adam a list today of people who, sorry, what was that?
Vice versa too.
Yeah. I mean, I sent Adam a list today of people who are part of our CRO school, and we've got a live session tonight. And I said, Adam, let's just reach out to them and make sure we get as many people on the call tonight. And he is like, oh, I lost the list. Where's the list of people? So I sent it to him, and he goes, bloody marketer, you've given me the list of names, but the company that they're at isn't exactly next to them in this screenshot. He's like, this is going to take me too much time to go and look up myself. And he's like, this is why salespeople get annoyed with marketing. He's like, because most of us, time is money, right? And if you don't have all that information ready for me in one place, you just go boom, 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 boom. Like, I'm just going to go like, I'm done with this. Like, I'm just moving on to doing what I know makes me money. And so it's just little like that where you're like, okay, we need to get on the same page more. We need to understand each other. But also, I think sometimes, and a lot of companies that we see, they're really hamstrung by the way that we're measured. Marketing being fundamentally measured a lot of the time based on MQL, a lot of sales, based on if they're using the predictable revenue model, based on meetings booked. And that basically stops marketing from dedicating any of its resources to doing any real marketing that educates, and instead is designed to just try and pull people's contact details. Capture demand, which, as we know, is like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yeah. What do you think how do you, I mean, I wasn't planning on getting into this, but it just dawned on me, like, I think the same problem lies within sales as it does and sometimes lies with marketing, meaning the problem of trying to fix a problem with tech. I'm curious what your stance is as you continue to consult with companies on building marketing engines. Is it heavily, do you feel like maybe marketers need a little bit more perspective in that they're focusing probably more on even AI than the SDR or AE or the sales the sales team is? Like, how is it affecting the mindset of marketers? How is AI affecting the mindset of marketers as they try to address problems with it? You think it's the right way to go, or
I think that technology just keeps pulling us further away from the customer themselves. And I think the more that we do that, we actually kind of pull ourselves away from what is important to sales as well. And I think AI, without knowledge of the fundamentals, I think AI is only going to make that worse. Like, you see all of a sudden, Clay raised a ton of money. They've got this huge valuation. Everyone's obsessed with Clay. And what's the first thing they want to do with it? They want to use it to now all of a sudden write their emails, like using AI based on all this data that they scrape, and they want to just blast the market. Again, just looking for that needle in a haystack, except now they're using AI to do it and it's cheaper. But guess what? Like, you're probably burning a few relationships there too, or you're missing like a lot of opportunities to build relationships. And so many teams just keep looking to technology to find these answers, like AI and using things like Clay, when they haven't even done the fundamentals, which you can do out of a spreadsheet. Like, have you in sales sat down to define like who is your ideal customer, not just like firmographics and demographics, but like psychographics, use cases? Like, what are the key triggers that bring someone into market? Have we defined what their buying journey even really looks like? Have we agreed on named accounts like that actually fit that criteria? Can we pull a list of accounts that we go, okay, sales and marketing, this is our list. We're going to market together. Can we even do that? I think you'll probably find that most haven't done that. And you can do that out of a bloody Google sheet or an Excel sheet, It's wild how much that we just keep leaning on technology to try and do more for us when people don't have the basic fundamentals in place. And you'll probably say from your experience too, it's the fundamentals, which is what really works, because it's all about building trust. Without trust, we have nothing in B2B, and spam cannons do nothing to build that trust.
Yeah. I worked with a gentleman when I worked for a large building products company. People probably know here. I don't know how much. Oh, maybe you do in Australia. But Sherwin-Williams Paint Company.
Yep.
Sherwin-Williams Paint. I was a territory sales rep. I'd sold to paint contractors. I sold to building engineers and hospitals and schools and things like that. And anyways, the short of it was, there was a guy, gentleman on our team, about 67 years old or so. His name was Mario, real Italian guy. He was one of the nicest guys. I mean, like 9 grandchildren and 7 other kids. Just a family man, lovely man, right? And when Sherwin-Williams, he was with Sherwin-Williams like 40 years or something, right? but but when I joined in like '02, a little bit after '02, instead of going with Salesforce, Sherwin-Williams, billion-dollar company, decided to build their own like sales CRM tool. And Mario, like me and many others, I mean, he's a lot older than me, but we're like, wait a second, like we did everything in daytimers and filofaxes. I don't know if you know what that is, but like on paper, like, but we had a process, right? It's a process. You had a way that you collected the information, specific questions, specific tabs, like you were able to create, it was all on paper, but it was like your scheduler and all this kind of stuff. And right, everything was there. It was a system. Like, you might call it a system, even though it was on paper. And Sherwin-Williams wanted us to move everything now to this new CRM and have it on these like Trio smartphones. I don't know how old you are, but back in the early 2000s, there was this Trio smartphone. So it was like a push button thing, like almost like
Yeah.
it was a larger BlackBerry, if you will.
Right. Yeah.
And I just remember I was one of the leaders in the team, and I'm talking with Mario, and I'm like, Mario, you got to use this because it was like they were forcing us to use it, right? But that then salespeople saw it as just a nuisance, like, oh, they saw it as a micromanagement tool and whatever. But the thing was Mario and even myself a little bit, like, he had a book, he had a notebook, he had a process, right? Like, and you know what? He was one of the largest adopters of that platform because he had the process already. He just had to learn how that process fit on top of the tech, right? But at the end of the day, the problem was with some of the other reps who subsequently got fired because they didn't do enough work in their CRM or enough reporting in the CRM, because they just didn't have that discipline. They didn't have those fundamentals, that customer management, just that process of bringing customers through and customer success. I mean, it was not as clearly defined or overly defined as it is in some of the sectors we roll in now. But, back then it was still just what made Mario great and easily transition to the tech was because he already had a system, right? He just had to figure out, how does this fit into my system, right? And I think that's the problem, right? I think people are fixing the wrong problem.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. You're right. People don't have that system, that process, that framework, which is based on the fundamentals to begin with. And they're hoping technology is going to fix their problem. And you can go to like any vendor of anything to help with sales and marketing and look on their website and look at what they promise. And it's ridiculous, right? They promise like return on investment of like, 10 times and testimonials from people saying this changed our business and this and that. It's like, this isn't going to do anything for you unless you have these fundamentals down and a simple process to follow. Technology is there to amplify something that is already working. It's not there to replace it. Absolutely.
I agree. But, with that said though, right? Like we talked a little bit about, you mentioned it, of course, with your anecdote about Adam and not like understanding how each other kind of works. Kind of leads me to think, like, can sales and marketing really work together? And is it when we talk about alignment, it's a fluff word, sure, but what does that really mean? Does it mean that we seriously need to be on the same compensation plan? We need to be on the same target? We need to or we need to just respect each other's targets and understand how we both get each other there and not independent of each other? I mean, really, like, there's a lot of talk about this all the time. Silos breaking down. Is alignment real? Is alignment look like pods? I always say that, right? Like, I always go back to my pod theory. My pod theory probably stems more from, like brokered, financial brokerage houses and things. Sometimes they operate like this, where there's a market maker, and then he's got an associate, and then he's got like this junior guy and a person that's taking another junior guy. So it's like a four kind of thing. We even had that early in IT consulting in the 90s. I sat in a sales team. It was the group, we call them a group manager, a senior consultant, a junior consultant, and then a trainee. So the group manager sat in front of the trainee, and the junior and the senior sat in front of each other, and they worked leads. They multi-threaded through companies with each other. passing like things, leads. Like I
Mm.
would, when I was a senior counsel, I would call somebody, get hung up on. I would give that. We didn't have a CRM, by the way. We did everything on index cards, and so like I would hand that index card to my junior guy or my senior guy and go, hey, you call him. And then they would go call him and maybe set a meeting, like 10 minutes later, right? It's a different voice, different person. I mean, that's how it was. And so like, but it was a way to work together as a team. And now we were all salespeople, we weren't marketers, but I always think that there's some merit in that, right? Where you have, you have, like you said, assigned accounts. So here's a group pod. They have assigned accounts. You have a marketing lead in that pod. You have the sales lead in that pod. And when I say sales lead, I mean somebody who's going to ultimately take the conversation from even cold calling or whatever inbound all the way through discovery. And then if there has to be a demo or proposal period or meeting, then there's like maybe that engineer on the team. So you've got this engineer closer, if you will, or maybe you're the closer, but with the engineer. And then you've got the marketing professional. And then you have like somebody who's more of like a rev ops who's going to build the lists and maybe, be system oriented or whatever. But it's like now you have alignment, right? You don't have this separate whole marketing department, right? Maybe you have a general marketing department that is going to do the website and is going to do events, but when it trickles down to the territory assignments or company, or, customer assignments, like you said earlier, maybe a pod structure, the alignment is there. And then the pod gets commissioned and based on revenue, and that's it. I don't know. That was my theory. I've floated it several times.
So the pod structure is something that we try and get marketers to do when they come through the B2B incubator program, because it's also a great way of testing this out and proving that it works. So we say, grab like one marketer, one salesperson, focus on one very tightly defined ICP and named accounts, and let's roll out this pilot project. And so then you can have like really tight feedback loops. You've got two people working together, hopefully sales and marketing, like each can see the benefit of each other's work more easily. They can see how they're basically, singing from the same choir sheet. They're working towards the same end goal. They just have like slightly different skill sets to help execute that, but they need to be working towards the same goal. So I really, really like that pod structure. For those that are able to test it out, like we have seen some really good outcomes from that as well. And then others who have then gone to roll that out to more sales and marketing people in the company too. But a lot does come down to, I think, like how we're compensated as well. Why shouldn't marketing, if we have so much influence like over the buying journey, if we're still doing that communication, and now like with digital channels and everything that we're doing, we're able to reach these people so much more than we were able to before. Like, why shouldn't we be comped in and brought in if a deal gets across the line? And then we're incentivized to do as much as possible. I've seen probably the lighter touch version of this that we've seen work is, like a quarterly bonus if revenue targets are met across like a pod. But I know Adam spoke about, marketing used to get like a percentage of commission, and the customer success like used to get a percentage of commission as well. So like, why not bring that back?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I don't think we're suggesting in this here, and at least in this forum, I'm not suggesting that marketing people get paid maybe salary. I mean, I think still salary wise, there's probably going to be some market trending figures there. And I don't think, listen, I know there's probably people on marketing teams that get paid more than sales people do, paid in salary. Usually, the right formulation, of course, is more commission based. For salespeople, love that more, right? But it's like, so forget that. So align the proper salaries, and then the commission structure, the it's a bonus or whatever based on revenue is fair. Now, if the company doesn't hit it, why would I pay you? And it's like this, right? like I don't think, I don't know about you, but one of the things is what I don't like about bonus structures or particularly bonus structures, not commissions, but bonus structures where you're paying something on a quarterly or you're paying an annual bonus. My problem with those is in some industries and in some companies, it's a all or nothing. Like you either hit this
Mm,
X number 100%
yeah.
or you get nothing, right? Sherwin-Williams, coincidentally, and several companies I worked for in the past, in the building product space, actually start paying at 80%, right?
Yep.
So if you think about the market that people always spout about on LinkedIn, there's only, so many people hitting quota, and most of the people are only 40% of quota. No one would get the bonus, but I feel like 80 was fair. I felt like, because it's so hard to get to there, in some cases. So if you get 80, you should get something, right? And in their case, the way they structured it, which I thought was wonderful, was 80, but you don't get 100% of the bonus. At 80%, you only get like 50% of the bonus, and then at 90, you get 75% of the bonus, and then 91, 92, and it escalated till you got at 100, you got 100. But the beauty of it is at 137%, which was President's Club, more than 125% was President's Club. You actually make overrides on everything over versus on top of the President's Club. Maybe I could just cut that right there and say Sherwin-Williams had an incredible package. I made a lot of money there, let's just say. But like, yeah, I mean, I think there's so much room for creativity in compensation that you can make marketers and salespeople happy enough that they don't quarrel.
Yep.
In my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great example of how you can structure things to keep teams like really well aligned and pushing as hard as possible. And also, like I suppose like once you group yourself into these pods and you start taking more of a demand gen mindset, there's a time lag that goes with any of this as well. And this is a big reason why people try these things and they don't follow through, because all the research shows that the marketing efforts that you do now, and it's probably the same with like, cold calling, it's basically marketing too. The marketing efforts you do now are not going to come to fruition for 6 to 12 months at minimum. And people go, oh, well, why is that? Maybe is marketing useless then? But it's like, well, because chances are the people that you're speaking with are not in a buying cycle right now. They're not ready to buy right now. So it doesn't make those touch points useless. It just means that there's going to be a time lag effect and there's going to be a delay. And so then you want your compensation structures, I think, probably to account for that accordingly. So we're not disincentivizing people from sticking to that pod structure and sticking to also generating demand as one team.
I got a question. Do you think, so I'm thinking about, when you say the follow-up, and we always talk about, it's not always the first call. It could be multiple touches before, they're in that buying window. And I've always believed that, like with respect to outbound or cold outbound, the SDR AE complex, the problem there is the SDR role is seen as either as a stepping stone to the AE. It's more glorious to be an AE. Who wants to make cold calls, all that kind of stuff, right? And so it forces them to want to get it out as fast as they can, 3 months, 6 months, maybe no more, right? I'm not going to be an SDR for 1 in 6 months. I'm going to be out. And I guess the problem there is like, well, if you start your job and you're not really good at it yet, right? And it takes a couple of months to ramp or a month to ramp, right? And now you're ramped and now you're having actually good conversations, right? And maybe you even hit quota, right? Whatever that quota is. And you were promised a promotion, or you can move to AE. So now 6 months goes by. Now you only had 3 months of 4 months of really good conversations, where maybe a certain percentage of those conversations have become sales engaged leads that need a follow up in 6 months. The only problem there is now that SDR is no longer in that role, right? So a new SDR comes in and they're trying to work maybe what they might have identified as low-hanging fruit. Oh, here's a follow-up task. Let me call this person. Well, now that person is brand new, right? So they suck on the phone and they ain't good yet. They haven't ramped. And so now they're calling leads of that were called 6 months ago that are probably now in the buying window, but they're going to miss it because they're not ready, right? Or the fact that the customer is going to go, oh yeah, but I don't remember talking to you. I talked to somebody else, and maybe they didn't take good notes, right, for some reason. So now they're starting that call from scratch, or they're trying to say, oh, I talked to you a couple of months ago, or they even worse, they say, you talked to one of my colleagues, yeah, and now I'm talking to you, and I don't want to talk to you either. So it's like, I'm curious, is there positions within marketing? Because I don't, I only had marketing teams when I worked in big corporations, so I really wasn't privy to what they're doing. But is there any kind of stepping stones there that precludes your marketing efforts, or like, so shall I say, like, kind of hinders your marketing efforts in that same respect?
I would say that marketing also suffers from its own silos within marketing. So not only is like marketing like kind of disconnected from sales, marketing has been broken down into so many specializations that we've lost sight of how they all work together to create one buying journey. So you might have people who are doing events, but the events people aren't connected to the brand marketers. And then the brand marketers aren't connected to what demand generation is doing. And then the content team is off doing their own thing because they're incentivized on the amount of traffic that they're getting, but it's actually not traffic from the right people. And so we all like working at cross purposes rather than, again, just aligning on the fundamentals and realizing that we've got a market we're going after. We've got to figure out what their buying journey is, answer their questions along the way. And then all those specializations are just different channels of getting in front of them. Like the things that you're saying at the event should be the same things that you're posting on LinkedIn, which should be the same things that you're posting with your organic content. But like we've all got these separate divisions and they're incentivized differently and have different KPIs. So we actually have these silos within our own silo, which it probably also contributes to sales being like, marketing, what the hell are you doing?
Well, that's part of the problem then. Yeah, I've never heard that. I've never heard somebody talk about it like that. I appreciate that. So alignment, not only between sales and marketing, but within marketing itself, within sales itself. I mean, look, there's specializations in sales, right? AE, SDR is a specialization. Mid-market, enterprise, SMB. Well, I believe that, the quote unquote silo, if you want to call it that, of mid-market, SMB and enterprise is rightful, is purposeful, because they are truly different sales kind of motions. In an enterprise, well, I mean, depending on what you're selling to them, right? Enterprise software, obviously software for enterprise, that means that software, that piece of software can infiltrate multiple departments in a 10,000 person company or whatever. But ironically, if you have a specific, like if you sell legal tech, is that enterprise technology just because the company is 1,000, 10,000 people? I don't think so. You're selling to companies we call enterprise because enterprises means big companies, more than 1,000 people or more than 5,000 people, or whatever, it's more than 500, whatever the filter is there. But it's but you may only be selling to one decision maker in that company. Meaning one department. Of course, there's probably a hierarchy of decision makers all the way up to the CFO or CEO. I get that. But that's any company. That's every company, no matter what you sell, SMB or a mid-market. SMB, you might actually be talking to the owner. Mid-market, you could be talking to middle managers, right? That eventually have to go up. Enterprise, you're going to be talking about even somebody lower that has multiple people above them that they're going to have to get approval from. So it's a different sales motion. Is it, if you're not selling a product that goes into multiple industries? Because people think enterprises, oh, well, I got to sell it and I land and expand. Or is it like you only got half of the department and so now you want every other user in the department? I mean, I guess there's a couple of ways you can cut it up. I guess I'm asking a rhetorical question here, but I just feel like, even in sales, there could be silos, because of the specialization of roles. And for me, I feel like, I think that the top of funnel outbound business development is not an entry level role. It's not a role that should necessarily be a stepping stone. It can be, I don't see why BDR can't be a BDR for a year. I've been a BDR for 5 years.
Yeah.
And I'm 52, and I'll be 52 in April. So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's
I
only because
guess
I work for a
it's
sales development agency, and I do the work for our customers, so it never ends. But yeah, I'm not necessarily moving up, right? I'm a partner in the company anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I just feel like, wow, I never heard a marketer actually lay that out on the table like that. So I appreciate that. I want to get into talking about this. As a podcaster, as a marketer, as an independent brand builder, with the B2B playbook and such. Content engines are, everybody wants to be able to create content. I think the biggest challenge people have, not only we're all challenged by time in our day to create content, but I've learned a few things on how to do certain things that can batch or bulk up my content creation. But I think when I think of content engine, as much as I think of a sales engine, I think of something that's working. It's
yeah.
humming. It's just producing content naturally, or electronically, or AI generated, or whatever it is. But maybe as an independent marketer or brand builder versus a company builder, how does one get started in actually creating a content engine?
Yeah, I think it becomes very overwhelming for people because there's so much information out there, and they try to do too much all at once. I think to have a really good content engine, what you need is you need focus, and to have focus, you need to place constraints on what you're doing, and that starts with who is this content really for? Kind of defining again your ideal customers, and also defining what is your editorial mission, who is this for? What are you giving them, and how are you going to give it to them? So for us, the B2B playbook, we create content for demand generation marketers. We're giving them our step-by-step playbook to drive more revenue for the business and align more closely with sales. And we do that every week through the B2B Playbook podcast, and by doing it in articles, newsletters, YouTube shorts, right? Just very clearly define who it's for, what you're giving them, and how you're actually going to do it. Now, the point at which it becomes an engine and not just the content for content's sake is we don't just have random ideas and think, oh, let's go and create content, or read something on LinkedIn and go, oh, that's a really good point. Let's do that. What we do instead is we spoke to our ideal audience, conducted 50 interviews with people who I knew were my ICP, and spoke to them about what their pains are, but also what their buying journey typically looks like. And then we mapped that to the 5 stages of awareness, my favorite framework for mapping out a buying journey. And for those who don't know, the 5 stages of awareness is basically 5 stages that someone goes through from becoming a prospect to a buyer. Those stages are unaware, meaning they don't even know they have a problem that they need to address yet, problem aware, solution aware, product aware, and most aware. And then we map out the ideas that we have at each of those stages to get them from one to the next. Maybe have 2 or 3 ideas under each of them. And then we just repeat it again and again and again and again. And Mark, you've seen some of my stuff. I don't know if you felt that there's too much repetition. We really don't get that feedback, but we're just communicating the same ideas again and again and again through our different pieces of content. We have a system for consistently committing to creating that content, but it's all mapped back to that 5 stages of awareness. And that's the difference between just creating content for its own sake and actually building an engine that is mapped to the buying journey and takes people from that unaware stage all the way through to being a paying customer of yours.
So theoretically, or in practice, you'll have a kind of a message for the unaware, a message, a different message for the problem aware, a different message for solution aware, product aware, and what was the final? I forget you said.
Most aware.
Most aware. And that's, I thought you were going to say the people, I thought it was unaware, problem aware, aware that there's a solution, alerted or aware of that there is products out there, and then there's that kind of gets broken down a little to like they're aware of the solution, but they're now, and then the next stage is they're aware of your solution. Is that what you mean by most
that's probably the
aware?
difference
Is when they
between.
know everybody? Yeah.
No, so solution is when they're comparing different ways of solving that problem. So for demand, if for example, someone wants to implement demand generation in their business, there's a number of ways they could do that. They could hire an agency to help them do it. They could hire a demand gen expert internally. One other way is training up their own people internally, and that's what our course does. And so we explore in our solution aware content, like what are the pros and cons of each of them. And now look, our solution might not be for everyone. If you're a one-man band and you have no time on your hands at all, then maybe doing this in-house isn't the right option for you right now. Maybe you do just need an agency to help you get to that next stage, so then you can reinvest and do that. But so that's what solution aware content is. And then product aware is when you go, okay, now you're starting to compare, like you've decided that a demand generation course or program is the way to fix this. Now, maybe mine isn't the only one. What other ones are out there? And so then you start comparing them. And so that's where like case studies and comparison reports and all that kind of stuff comes into play as well. Testimonials, all that kind of thing. And then most aware, look, you could probably group product aware and most aware together, but most aware is like they're kind of on the brink. They're more ready to buy. Is there any kind of campaign we can do to push them across the edge?
So I want to get into this product aware because I think when you do start using case studies, use cases, and things like that, this is going to circle back to me, for me, to having that same verbiage, that same language transcending the different departments. And what I mean is like, look, you know, what I think a lot of folks, a lot of salespeople do wrong, of course, is, and we've seen plenty of content on this, is, you know, don't just write, oh, I'm following up, I'm pushing this up in your inbox, or circling back and all this kind of stuff. And quite honestly, if you start off that email circling back, as long as you have something else besides that, it's okay. I don't think it's that so bad. You use that. And it's not as played out as everyone thinks. It may be played out amongst all the sales professionals on LinkedIn, but you know, I call into hundreds of other sectors that never heard of the thoughts bump or any of these other quote unquote tricks or tips that people say. So I'm just going to put that to bed. But what I was thinking with the case studies is that when I call people back or for the second time after I've actually nurtured them in some kind of, I sent them the case study. I know that they're, you know, I'm trying to push, you know, I'm in this sort of sector. I'm in product. I'm trying to, you know, they're in the product aware. I'm trying to deliver to them information that could help them, you know, sit down or whatever it is at some point. And I think there's again the alignment with marketing. Marketing is going to have the best pieces, or have put together the best pieces, hopefully, as we work together. But then my ability to then get that person back on the phone and even comment or utilize the information that was in the case study and say, hey, by the way, you know, I sent you some content. I don't know if you read it, but you know, one of the key components in that article for me as it relates to you, Mr. Prospect, was XYZ, right? Now you're having a way much more intelligent conversation with the person. You're not just saying, hey, I'm following up. Do you want to sit down, right? I think it's interesting, again, you know, these stages, if you really break it down like that, help to pull these two groups together and understand that this stuff has to work in conjunction with each other. But no, definitely some interesting things there.
Absolutely.
What do you think about?
So I was just going to add it, like, that's why I think it's really important to map those key ideas to those 5 stages of awareness. You don't need to buy buyer enablement software. Create a Google sheet with unaware, problem aware, solution aware. Like, these are the ideas. These are the links to the content that we have. And make sure sales understand that as well. And then sales can start having better conversations too. And so, like,
Adam Robinson?
Yeah.
Do you know Adam Robinson at our B2B?
Absolutely.
You just use that, like, that's what they call his platform, right? Like, it's you said it, I forget the words you use. Get ahead.
But like,
what do you think is the biggest? What do you think the biggest, like, what does he think is the biggest thing holding people back from really? I mean, I get the framework, and that's how you can drive more content, but it's not about more content. It's about alignment. It's
Yep.
about, some of these other things you mentioned. But I don't know. I think it's, some people also view it as, how do I like not be behind the eight ball? Like, how do I get ahead of all this stuff? And I think, again, even with that, it's like, how could I use AI so that I don't have to do as much work? I think that's the baddest attitude that everybody has, is like, I
Mhm.
want to inject AI into everything so I can do less work.
Yeah,
The idea of really working hard or working strategically for long hours is long gone, and
well,
I
and
don't know why.
this is the thing, Mark, is like a lot of the stuff that we talk about is simple, but it doesn't mean simple is easy. Like simple
Right.
can still be hard. It takes time
Right.
for you to have conversations with the market to find out like how they're really framing problems, finding out like what's important to them and feeding that information back to marketing. It takes time to map it to the 5 stages of awareness. It takes time to go through your existing content and map it to that. It takes time to sit down with sales and make sure they understand how to do it. All these things are simple, but I don't know. Like, I guess they're still hard to do. You still have to do them. And people just keep looking to AI and technology to fix that stuff for them. But we said it before, technology is an amplifier. It can't replace
Yeah.
that hard stuff. My grandfather always said to me growing up, he said, Yorgo, my Greek name is Yorgo. He said, Yorgo, always do things the hard way, never the easy way. And I used to think that was such a ridiculous statement. And I was always to think like, no, I'm going to do it the smart way. But now,
Right.
like now I get it. I get what he's saying. There's no shortcuts for the fundamentals. There's no shortcuts for the hard stuff. You have to do it.
Yeah. 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 And I don't think it's mature enough yet to rely on its database of whatever it is to map out those kinds of things, to help people understand where somebody is in their journey. And I think, for me, again, I'm always I'm very phone first. So, talking to people, you mentioned it earlier, maybe having like a round table, or a forum for your customers. What was it? You said it earlier.
Advisory
Where you
board
might,
or roundtable.
advisory boards,
Yeah.
things like that, where you can actually get valuable information. It's funny. I don't know if you're familiar with Shane Mahi. He's with a company called Mega.ai. I'm sure you've seen his content. He and I are pretty good friends. He's going to be on the show at the end of the month. And one of the things I always admired about him is, and he still is doing it today, but now just for Mega. But he holds these like leadership dinners, and he gets like, a bunch of CEOs or whatever. Well, actually, the way he does it is, well, before he was at Mega, what he was doing was he was doing it for other companies. So he would meet somebody like you, right? And like you market to, or you sell to, directors of marketing or marketing agencies or marketing companies, whatever it is. And so like he would come to you and say, hey, I'll set up a leadership dinner for you, and so you'll be the host of the dinner, but he'll curate the whole thing, the place,
Yeah.
the people. He'll bring the people. You just tell him who you want to be there, and he'll bring those people if it's not customers. And then he sets it up, to have a meaningful conversation at that dinner amongst everybody, almost like a panel discussion, right? And it's just and there's so many neat ways that you can gather this quote unquote first party data, if you will, that you could use that really helps you, guide you. I mean, I think the biggest mistake is the assumptions we make as founders or as marketers or even salespeople, and or for that matter, you hear something from one customer or from a couple of customers, and you're like, oh, that's it. You got to test that still. Why do so many companies in the beginning, the founder-led sales concept of, well, I'm just going to capture all the low-hanging fruit, right? All the people who already know, like, and trust me, I'm going to get those people in. That's why it's so disparate, right? So when a company or consultant like myself or yourself goes in, and you say, well, who's your ICP? And you say, oh, well, you know, like like, for example, I had a client we sat down with, or a prospect we sat down with, and he had, he was an MSP, and he had 3 case studies on his website. First and foremost, you couldn't even access them, right? You click on them and it didn't go anywhere, which is like immediately a red flag for me, right? But the thing is the 3 case studies were so significantly different, right? I mean, they're an MSP or an IT company, right? So they did some application development here. They did some infrastructure, something totally different there. They did a data consolidation, data mining project. So it's like 3 different things in 3 different sectors, right? And so that's okay, right? Because you're first starting out, right? And you don't have a lot of customers. You're getting all this, you're casting a wide net, right? But now, embedded inside of those 3 cases, if you can ask the right questions, right, and get the feedback from those specific customers on exactly, you know, the before and after picture is something that we always do with customers when we sit down and say, I'm going to sit down with your 3 best customers, or your 3 customers that you can recommend and get me in front of. And essentially what I'm going to ask them is, what did your world look like before said MSP? And what does it look like after, you know, said MSP? And what were those pains, and dig into those questions, things like that. And that helps us really kind of formulate talk track. It helps us formulate content, like you said. And it's just so paramount in the process that it's amazing that people, they wonder, they say, oh, well, this is what this customer said, so then I put it in a marketing piece, but now it doesn't get any play. Well, you got to do the work, man. It's not just one, you know.
That's
it's
right.
like 100, if not 1,000 before you I mean, look, companies, I mean, listen, you know, you can name a dozen companies off the top of your head, even huge brand names. You think they were all of a sudden, look, Nike, all right, maybe Nike's different because, you know, once Michael Jordan endorsed Nike, it went through the roof, right? But it was like, you know, before that, they were still selling sneakers. How are they doing it? Right? Grit, fundamentals, you know. That's like today, like people's like, oh, there was this whole like barrage. I think it's kind of calmed down a little bit, but there was this moment, I want to say it kind of slowed down towards fourth quarter last year, but like for the whole first 9 months of last year, I think LinkedIn was all about, or well, at least what people were talking about was, you know, these quote unquote influencers who are now touting different pieces of software or different, and getting paid for it or not getting paid for it. Who gives a shit if they were getting paid or not getting paid? I don't give a shit. If they think it works and it's worth looking at, then I'll look at it, you know, if I have the problem that it can solve, right? But I think people are just like influenced so much, and they thought, oh, let me hire Morgan Ingram to talk about this product once a week for, you know, $20,000, and we'll see what happens. And you know, granted, he may have been talking about it, but you know, you still have to have, you got to do more than that. You can't just rely on you know, one channel. And I think the problem is it's that they go to the one channel and then it doesn't work, so they try another thing, and that's okay, I guess, early on. But it's like, you know, you got to dig deeper, right? You got to really get, you know, if you don't have any customers, that's one thing, but if you have customers, I mean, you just got to continue to leverage that first party data coming from them, or host these other things like you're saying, or go to events and just ask the right questions. I think people just try to sell, and they're just not doing the right thing. And, you know, listen, man, I really thank you for coming on the show. This was an amazing conversation. I've learned so much. I would love to do it again and actually get more into more of this content thing and podcasting too, because you guys do that pretty good. Love to be on your show if anything, if it makes sense. But I want to definitely just close off with what is George's hack, if anything, keeping himself going, looking so spry even on a Wednesday night. What are you doing? What are you eating?
The Mediterranean diet, of course. Having my plenty of olive oil.
You got the mix of both worlds, man. You've got the Mediterranean in you, and now you're in the Eastern Hemisphere. Man, it must be.
Yeah.
I think my uncle, who I unfortunately didn't see this weekend, he was in town, had gone to Australia, and I think one of the things I remember, was it Australia or Africa? I think it was in Australia. Are there camels in Australia too? No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
Are
there
there
are.
camels?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I
Yep.
forget if it was in Australia. I think something in I remember a story where he said like they were on this reserve, maybe it was Africa, and the camel kind of came in the window when they were eating breakfast and literally like took the muffins off the plate and backed out of
Wow.
the window. He was like, the thing just went like, took the muffin and came right out the window. But yeah, I got to imagine. Do you surf?
No, no, no. Always grown up near the water, but dad was always very into golf, and so took us to the golf course instead. So I'm a golf tragic, and that's probably actually what contributes to the tan is going out and hacking around for 5 hours every Saturday morning.
Oh, good for you, man. Yeah, I love golf. It's usually most people, if I'm sitting down, this is a stand-up desk, but you can see I got my clubs in the back, and
Oh, awesome.
I'm not that great. I just love playing. I love trying to get better. I think it's something you can work at without obviously like getting mauled like in football or whatever. Like
Yeah.
I'm not playing softball or football on the weekends with my buddies, but I'd rather just drink some beers and smoke some cigars and hit that white ball and hopefully try to hit it as straight as possible.
Yeah, it's
But I got
fun.
to imagine the beautiful courses in Australia. It's always warm there,
There is
so you
some.
must be play all the time.
The coastline is like still pretty raw in some places, and it can get windy, but it can be absolutely gorgeous and just such a fun game. You can be competitive with yourself, but not ruin everyone else's day, and you can play across generations. I once played with a
Well, hold on a
guy who
second.
was.
Wait, hold on a minute. But don't you think? I don't know about you. You do play against yourself, but don't you think if you're playing with people who are better, you play better, just like in basketball?
100%.
Okay.
100%. Yeah. If you play with better people, you get better. Like there's the pressure to play better. I think you pick up from like maybe through osmosis as well. I don't know, but I
Whatever.
fully
But if
agree.
you play with worse people, then you probably play shitty, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's happened to me. Like I remember coming on I remember coming on this early morning, and I usually play with my neighbor, but he wasn't available, so I went over to the course on my own. And these three guys, and they looked pretty in shape guys, big guys, and they're all laughing, and I had to play with them, right? Because I had to have four, and they had three. And so we get on to the first tee, and they're like, yeah, they said I could go, and I was like, nah, you go. And they're like, nah, we suck, like that, right? And I was like, this guy's probably a ringer. He's probably just saying that, right? And they actually weren't that great. They were not. Let me say, what happened was they said they weren't great, and then they suck. We're just hacks. And then the first tee, this guy drives it like 280 yards, 300, almost 300 yards. And I'm like looking at him going like, this guy just lied to me. They're going to be like awesome players. And they all played, honestly, literally the first 3-4 holes really well. And they didn't say nothing. And then it went down. Then it went downhill after that. Like this guy was just such a big hack. He could drive the ball like 300, 320 yards, but like he had no approach. He had no he had no green game or anything like that. So like I wound up probably looking a lot better than they did. But like at first I was like, oh shit. And they came up to the first tee because it was like 8 a.m. And instead of hitting the driver, this is where it threw me off. Instead of hitting the driver, they hit like a 4-iron or something like that, a 3-iron. And I was like, oh shit, I never thought about that. Because usually like no matter what, I'm always, if it's a par 5 or par 4, which it is, I'm stretching, I'm doing my swings with my driver. I'm gonna hit my driver. Like, why wouldn't I? And I thought to myself, wow, that's actually pretty. And when this guy hit like a beautiful like first shot, 8 a.m, straight with his 4-iron, I was like, oh shit, maybe I should do that. And I shanked my drive, right? I did the drive.
Yeah.
So on the second hole, I was like, oh, maybe I should use the 4 because it's like links, so it's like almost the same exact hole, like just a little bit lower elevation, but it was like same straight hole and same distance. And I was like, oh, I'll pull out my 4, see how that works. And these guys go back to their driver, and I'm like, wait a minute here, what the fuck is going on, right? And so but then like by the 5th hole, that guy's game just started going downhill. Like I was just like, all right, maybe you're not that good. But he freaked me out at first when they said that. I was like, I'm gonna get crushed today. But I always do believe that, like, if you play with better guys, because also, you always got to share a cart. I don't walk, so it's like, we're looking for their ball. I'm gonna wind up hitting my ball in the woods too, just so I could be right next to him, something like that.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, no, we always. It's funny. I think you can tell a lot about someone from the way they sort of behave and carry themselves on the golf course. It's always fun.
Oh,
I once played with a guy who was 99 years old, which was unbelievable. Like, still could swing, could hit the ball decent.
Super.
But let me tell you, he was probably the biggest asshole I've ever played with.
I don't care if you suck, but don't be an asshole.
Yeah, this guy, he's 99, and he's teeing off. It's off the first tee, and I'm standing behind the tee box, like 10 meters behind him, and he goes, "Do not stand behind me. I used to be a fighter pilot. Any kind of motion anywhere near me, I can sense it, and it throws me off." I'm like, how can you? You're 99. That is unbelievable. If you can see 10 meters, like, incredible. But yeah, the guy was a total prick. But
sometimes
great experience playing
guys,
with them.
I actually think, like, when I play with some of the older guys, like, some of them are good, but like, we do have some guys, like, I go to the same course all the time just because it's right around the corner, and I always think I could play it better if I play it more times. But like, I feel like, the only thing with them, there's one guy that plays there. He's a nice guy. He doesn't really speak too much. He plays very quietly. Sometimes he's there with his wife, and usually when he's not there with his wife, obviously he's even more quiet. He hits the ball straight. May not hit it very far, right?
Yeah.
Like his handicap is like 18. Just give him an extra stroke because he's always going to be like a women's tee type of guy. But he doesn't play from it. Then I wanted to say to him, like, we played one time, and we were like 11, 12 hole, and I said, hey man, you hit the ball straight every time. Like, why don't you just start from the ladies' tee? I mean, it's 50 yards. It's 50 yards closer. You'd be like, because what happens to him is, like, he hits it mostly straight, but then he's like, my second shot will be on the green, and then he'll be still short of the green, even like a more than a pitch away, and so it's like, like on a big par 5 or something, so I'm like, you just play from the ladies' tee, it'd be great. But the thing is he hits it straight. That's the difference. And the greatest thing about some of those old guys, because a lot of them have had hip replacements and things, they don't have like the natural swing that maybe a younger guy has. But you look at him, you're like, oh, that shit. Oh, and then he hit it straight. Like, you see him like jerk his hip in a weird way, and he doesn't go all the way around, but yet that ball goes straight. He lets the club do the work. That's the most important thing. The first thing I ever learned from a trainer is let the club do the work. Because all those, all the goombas on the course that try to muscle it, like this guy did, like he was trying to muscle it, and in his first couple of shots, that kid, he hit it great, but then his game went downhill because you can't muscle it all the time. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Which is like adding AI to it. Get rid of the AI, you'd hit it straight. God knows there's AI in golf for some house. Like, it's weird. I think so many people treat AI as like it's an entity of itself, but everything has intelligence. Everything is being built today or rebuilt today using AI on the back end that you don't see. So it's not its own entity. It's not walking around living life. It's not going to be its SaaStr. Walking around with a badge around its neck. Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna show up at AI. I'm gonna wear a total body suit, no face, and I'm just gonna write AI on my chest and see what happens.
I think that's what Elon Musk did, didn't he? With his Tesla robots. They were just, I think, a lot of the time they were just like kind of remote controlled with people actually behind them. and fool a lot of people. But anyway, I'm sure the audience is probably done with us talking about golf.
No. Wait, listen, I try to, like, just like my content, man. Like last night I just told a story about my career, a pivotal moment in my career. I post things sometimes, a kid, or like we did this whole Halloween animatronic thing. I posted that. I mean, I just, like, I'm not on LinkedIn to make money. It's not driving inbound leads. People like solicit me all the time. It's like, oh, you're not using your profile. I like, do you know what I do? Like, my customer is not, I mean, if I want to sell, like, my coaching services or my consulting services for businesses, like coaching SDR teams or cold call coaching, whatever, sure, I could use it for that. But what I do, like my business, like the companies I'm working with and I own, are not like the clients, like my clients or prospects are not on LinkedIn. Like, I'm not driving people to my LinkedIn page because I want them to buy a product for one of my clients that I'm working for, like MSI Data or whatever, any of the clients that we have. We're a sales development agency, so we're doing outbound business development for people. I'm setting up LinkedIn inbound maybe for my client, like the founder there or the AE there, but not me, because it's like, I mean, my content doesn't match that. Like, I don't pitch anything in my content. Like, I never talk about my clients, like what they do, and I just don't. It doesn't make sense, because they're gonna come to my they're gonna come to my LinkedIn page if they even are active, which they're not. Usually the people that, like, our success in our agency has been mostly with companies that sell into, like, trade and home services businesses, like HVAC, plumbing, electrical. We have a field service management company, tool platform that we're selling for one company. We have an e-commerce platform we're selling for another. Like, we have right now we have an MSP that actually has that calls into retail quick service restaurants like Domino's Pizza, Marco's Pizza, Red Robin's, that kind of stuff. And those people, they don't even have information. They're not even on LinkedIn. They're not on LinkedIn at all. Right? Some of them, right? And even those that are, Zoom Info has no information on them. Apollo has no information on them. It just, like, I pull up the Zoom Info Chrome extension, it'll be like, no information on this company, right? Because it says Domino's. The problem is Domino's, but they're a franchise, so they have a corporation name. The corporation name doesn't come up. They don't have a page for that. And Domino's, you get Domino's, like Zoom Info gives you all the Domino's corporate, 10,000 people. I don't want the CEO of Domino's. I want this owner, this franchise owner who owns 9 stores in Illinois, or 25 stores in A and Z, right? Like, there's actually a couple of Domino's. There's one guy I saw has Domino's. He has like 79 Domino's in Australia. One franchisee. There's a lot of, you know Domino's, right? Obviously. Domino's.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. He said, I think the number said 79 or 59 or something like that. Yeah. Do you know that you could be Domino's franchisees owners are usually people who started as, like, kitchen or counter help or delivery drivers, and they have a really exceptional program where they recruit from within their employee base into the management program. Once they get into the management program and they become like a manager or a general manager of a store, then they have the ability, first look, at buying their own franchise, right?
How smart is that?
Domino helps them do it. Yeah. So
that's
there's
unreal.
kids that were delivery drivers. Yeah, there were kids that were delivery drivers in 2018. I talked to him today. One kid, he was a delivery driver kid. He's like, I don't know how old he is. He was a delivery driver. He started out as a delivery driver, went into the management program. 6 years later now, right? 2017. 6 years later now, he owns 5 or 6 Domino's franchisees. He's making $500,000 a year or more. And just 5 years ago, he was driving for him.
I mean, that's awesome. And what a way to do it, right? Like, it's like the pathway is, they're starting sort of in that customer facing, customer success role. understanding what makes the customers tick, what's important to the business, how you help people win. And then they've given them the tools to move to the front line. And now they're trying to win more business. It's exactly what we need to do, right? with the sales teams. It's the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, George, listen, this was a great conversation. I really appreciate it. I love sharing stories with you. Certainly hope to look to do it again. Other than the b2bplaybook.com, where should people find you and the like?
Yeah, probably, I suppose LinkedIn, George Coudounaris. You'll probably have to put the spelling somewhere. It's very long and convoluted. Other than that, we've got a growing YouTube channel as well, the B2B Playbook.
Nice. And you guys could check out my YouTube channel as well, SDR Insider. It's currently broadcasting off of that and my LinkedIn page. I'm Mark Mack, your lead cattleman on today's The Hump. Today's Wednesday. Join me next week when I bring in the indomitable Tom Slocum. Everybody knows Tom Slocum. He's joining me next week. And we're going to dive even more deep into agency work and more sales development stuff. So it should be quite exciting. But thank you, George. I appreciate it. Give my best to my man Adam when you see him. Do you guys actually see each other out there? Or you guys
we've actually never met in person. I think he's coming to Sydney I think he's coming to Sydney next week, hopefully. So we'll meet for the first time. But I mean, we spent so much time together just virtually. It's it'd be nice to see him.
Nice, man. Yeah, that's the other thing too. The other day I was looking at like some of the trade shows, Dreamforce and SaaStr, and it's very expensive, right? And I thought to myself, I'm like, God, like how do you? I don't want. I mean, so somebody said to me, well, if you find one customer, if you find somebody that eventually leads to revenue, it sort of really pays for itself 10 times over. I said, yeah, but I feel like if I go to SaaStr, I'd probably spend 99% of the time there just connecting with all the people that I've never connected with in real life that I talk to online. And so I probably won't be focused on actually driving any kind of business whatsoever. And although that might happen organically by just doing that, but I thought that would be my problem. I would come back with nothing and I'd spend $2,000 just to go there. And my wife would be really upset. She'd be like, you could have spent $2,000 on that and you could have took us to Florida. Oh my God, whatever. Anyways,
or buy new golf clubs.
Yeah. No, I do need actually I need like a fairway wood. I need like a 3 wood. That's really what I need. And all the stores around me just show drivers. No one else actually have like a 60-inch, 60 degree. I mean, 3 wood. I was like, I don't know, something like that. Maybe we'll see what happens.
Love it.
Thanks, man. Hopefully one day I could come to Australia, or if you're ever in the States, we could play some golf.
I would love that. That would be awesome. Thanks so much,
Awesome.
Mark. Thank you very much for having me on.
Perfect. Yeah, just stick around for a second. So I told everybody about next week. So peace, everybody. Have a good night.